Hey, it's Dave Michels. Welcome to Real Time Recorded. I'm here with Zeus Kerravala. Today we're going to talk about AI because Zeus, I just saw you in Orlando at the Enterprise Connect, and there was a lot of AI at that event.
Well, there's a lot of AI at all events. It doesn't really matter, Adobe Summit I was at, and it just seems like whenever they attended the virtual GTC event, and it doesn't really matter what event you go to. AI certainly overshadows everything today.
You know what I find interesting is that there's two conflicting messages coming from the vendors, and it's coming from the keynotes. It's coming from everybody, and I think they're in conflict. Maybe you think differently, but the first message is how disruptive AI is right now, particularly ChatGPT and generative AI in general, and so there's this big disruptive message, and then there's this other message from almost every single vendor in our space about how they've been working with AI for a long time so that they know how to handle all this. And it's like, I always thought disruptive was like, kind of bad for the incumbents. It was supposed to be like, this is the time where everything changes. And to that point, OpenAI is now kind of, getting a lot of attention. But you think about the history of AI, at least modern history of AI. You had IBM; they were kind of the leader, right? It was they beat Kasparov at chess in the late '90s. They won Jeopardy in 2011. So they're not even at the conversation right now. Although I guess you're going to an IBM event, so maybe that's a bad example. But right now, it seems like ChatGPT and DeepMind are kind of in the driver's seat of the AI conversation. So I find it kind of so weird the way I don't know how to. I don't know how to normalize this conversation. It's either super disruptive or we've been at it for a long time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think they've all been using some aspects of AI for a while, and so it depends on, I guess, what you call AI and how you use it and things. And everybody's had things like transcription for quite a while, and I'm actually getting tired of seeing the transcription demos. It's like, I know all that you can do that. Right? You all use the same algorithms. Stop that. Conversational AI has been around for a while, and so, but I think what they're trying to do perhaps is use it in a way, I suppose, that it could really change the way we work. Because I think to now, Dave, I don't know if AI has really been all that disruptive. I think it's allowed us to do things a little more efficiently, but it hasn't really changed the way we work, right? There's all these hypotheses about that you could have it be your personal assistant and things like that. And none of that's really come to fruition yet. We use it as a way to cancel noise. We use it as a way to get transcriptions, and all that's great, but it really hasn't fundamentally changed the way we work. And I guess that's the promise when they talk about disruptiveness, but so far it's a lot of theory.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And so the conversation's changing. Certainly in Microsoft keynote with Copilot, they were showing, they actually showed you could now attend two meetings at once because your AI can go for you and summarize everything. And I guess that's kind of true, assuming you're going to a meeting not to contribute. If you're just going there to keep up to date, but then I guess you always could have done that. And it's the old just send me an email instead of having me come to a meeting. But I think it's important to talk about how much AI has disrupted our space because we cover a lot of aspects of communications. And I would say CCAS is probably ground zero because every part of CCAS is changing from routing to quality metrics to coaching to scheduling and forecasting. I mean, pretty much every part of the CCAS umbrella is changing with AI technologies. But UCAS, the UCAS suite, certainly, we saw at Enterprise Connect a lot of multicam video. That's all being done with AI. We're seeing sound improvements. We're seeing the noise fence type of stuff, and in messaging we're seeing automatic responses or suggested responses. I noticed just an email too. I'm getting. I tend to use Google Mail mostly, but it's getting to be a little more aggressive in its suggestions and grammar. I actually had Grammarly reach out to me, and they say, "Hey, Dave, you write about communications and AI all the time. Maybe you should write about Grammarly." It's like I never really thought of Grammarly as a communications thing, but yeah, I guess I don't even know what the line is. And so I guess that's actually an interesting question: is comms going to get stronger or weaker? Does comms become part of something else in this AI disruption?
Yeah, and I use Grammarly all the time. Actually, it's a very good app. I think though comms is, and this is what Microsoft is doing to, right? It's making it a feature of a bigger portfolio of stuff, right? Be it for them, it's obviously part of their Office productivity suite. Google, frankly, should have been way out in front of that, but they just can never get their act together. But it's it's an interesting thing to think about, like what happens to this industry as more and more of the suite players get into this and decide that they want to embed this and make it part of their overall offering. Even on the CC side, it's not quite the same, but AWS now, if you use Connect, you store all the data in the AWS cloud, you have access to all the AWS tools, they're doing better integration and things. And so more and more, being a standalone player gets harder and harder, and you really have to keep the innovation engine sharp and stay up in front. I think there's always room for an innovator, right? If you're going to do something different. But then over time, more and more of those features get built into the platform, and then it gets harder and harder to continue to drive innovation. I'm not saying nobody can do it. It's harder and harder to do it.
Yeah, I think the contact center is really an interesting situation because the large language models add so much more capability in terms of human to computer communications, but and it's great in internet search, or people are using ChatGPT and going in there and just typing a prompt, responding to a prompt and requesting something, and they have no idea what you might request, and so it's actually pretty amazing that it can kind of figure out what you're talking about. But in contact centers, we generally know why you're calling. I mean, if you're calling an airline, you're probably calling about travel, and we can kind of narrow down that more. And in fact, that large language model doesn't seem to be as applicable because of specialized languages or vertical industries, or the AI models of the past have been developing over time, learning from your transcripts and learning from your recordings the right language. And so we've got this weird thing going on where we've got to leverage everything we've done from the past and somehow use this new technology from that's erupting. And I think it's going to be a really hard thing to do, partly because the large language models are moving so quickly. I mean, ChatGPT 3 came out, it was like right around the end of the year. I think it was around December, something like that, and really changed the conversation completely around AI. And then you've got like the Magic Quadrant conversational AI platform came out in March. They have one reference to ChatGPT. I suspect it got added just before it got published, because those reports take a long time to write. So they probably didn't really have much time to evaluate ChatGPT. But my point that I want to get to is that it's moving so quickly, because when ChatGPT 3.5 came out, they were finding that AI could pass the bar exam, which was kind of amazing on its own. But the system's capabilities were in the bottom 10% of the results of the bar exam. But then ChatGPT 4 came out just not much, like weeks later, and then all of a sudden they're in the top 10% of the bar exam. So this stuff is moving so fast that, our industry is not used to that kind of speed.
Yeah, and first of all, was it really that surprising to pass the bar? I mean, like really, if you could write the bar and sit there and be able to do Google lookups all the time, I bet you we could pass now. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I do think that it has the inherent advantage of just having this big, massive knowledge base.
I think the reason why it might be simple is because there's so many bar exam questions on the internet that this thing could have learned from already.
Yeah.
But in more esoteric exams or specialized skill sets, there's not going to be nearly as much out there on the internet for it to learn from. So that's...
Yeah, also it's not going to give you opinion, although I guess it could formulate opinion from popular opinion and things like that too, right? So, but then you have to start worrying about it, red state, blue state, things like that. So we'll leave that out of it. But it's going to be interesting to see how societally it gets used as well, because I know a lot of you and I talked about this, I think, at Enterprise Connect. A lot of the schools have banned it, right? And but I know some reporters. I talked to one reporter at Enterprise Connect that says he writes far more now than he ever did, because he uses ChatGPT to create the first version of his publication, and then he edits it, and he actually runs it through his own checker to make sure it passes their checker, and it's allowed them to scale much better. So, the way I look at it is it's a tool, and how we incorporate it in, matters. I think look at Wikipedia. It's obviated the need to go to a bunch of different encyclopedias, but you still got to do your due diligence, right? So I think.
Well, I think you're hitting on a really important point because as far as unified communications, or let me say enterprise communications broader, it is a tool. The problem is that this stuff is moving so quickly, and the concerns and scare around general intelligence AI, the computers taking over, are becoming are getting louder again, and the AI can already write a lot of code. The AI can already pass the bar exam. Can already do a lot of these things that we don't want to do necessarily. But it's not much longer if it could already write its code that it's going to start writing its code without us, and then all this stuff. And so there's a lot of really big concerns around general safety of AI, which is there's this big call for pausing AI development and all this stuff. Which, so there's I guess there's this. I keep on as I read those articles. There was a great article in the Financial Times this last week or so. As I read those articles, it's a very different conversation than say the enterprise communications, which just sees it as a tool. But I keep on thinking about like the contact center, for example. I'm calling up the contact center trying to get my password reset or something like that, and I keep on thinking of Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide. If you remember that book, Marvin was the depressed robot, and you ask him to Marvin, escort this guy to the bridge, and he's like, here I am, the brain the size of a planet, and they tell me to take you to the bridge, right? It's like I know how to improve hold times. Why don't we just remove you from the matrix and and forget your password? It gets a little scary pretty soon if these things could really do all these wonderful things. I think we have to kind of think about.
The question is what kind of due diligence do you do with these things, right? You can't blindly follow it. Do you remember the episode of The Office where Michael Scott drove into the lake, right? Because the GPS told him to, right? So, yes. But so I think we're going to have the equivalence of those, where we're going to ask ChatGPT to write us something or to draft an email, and it's going to be completely wrong. But because
it's worse than that, because that Financial Times article I just mentioned, I wish I had the name of it, but it was around general intelligence, why we have to stop general intelligence. But they were testing. This was a test. This wasn't real. But they were testing ChatGPT and the guardrails to see, if it could how far it can go on its own, and they wanted to see. I forget exactly the context of it, but basically, it got stopped by a what do you call those captchas? It got stopped by a captcha, and so the ChatGPT was going to hire a mechanical Turk to read the captcha, so that it can get past that thing. And the mechanical Turk guy, the human that got hired to solve these problems, was suspicious. Why am I being asked to read a captcha? So he asked, "Are you a bot?" And this is again a testing environment. But the ChatGPT responded, "No, I am not a bot. I have a vision impairment, and I need some help getting past this captcha." And so the guy gave him the answer to the captcha. So I mean, this stuff is really kind of like, well, wait a minute, our guardrails aren't even going to work. I mean, this is interesting stuff. So
the one element we didn't talk about too at Enterprise Connect, which there should be a session. I talked to Eric about it after, was the fraudster use of this stuff, right? And I was talking with one of the resellers I knew that was there, and he was saying that he had put in LinkedIn that he was in Boston, and shortly after that, some fraudster sent his CFO an email from him saying that he needed a couple of Apple gift cards to give to customers while he was at the conference, right? So could you please go buy them and just send me a picture of the numbers? And she called him and she said, "Don't be so lazy, go buy them yourself," right? He said he's just lucky she was a lazy person, because she believed it. And but that was written in his tone, right? It had a lot of the kind of things that he would say in it, but it's very easy. We really haven't, I think, looked at the at how this would be used in a negative way, and I think it gets easier and easier to, right? Voice authentication, all that stuff. So,
well, I actually had that in my in the last Insight report. I talked about there's going to be a big increase in phishing scams because It was hard. Phishing scams were easy enough to do before, but now one bad actor can run thousands of phishing scams in every language, very very easily, very well written text, and so I think we're going to see a lot of security and fraud types of issues with this, and even again in the contact center, because the voice biometrics, and I think we already just saw a recent case of that where it was imitating someone's voice and got past voice biometrics. So I think there's a lot of excitement around AI right now. Certainly there was at Enterprise Connect. A lot of people are claiming to be part of the innovators that are bringing all this, making all this possible. But I think we're moving pretty fast into an area that we don't really fully understand. I guess that's really the important thing about AI, is we don't really understand AI. It's not like we program it the way we program other kinds of software. And we're often surprised by what it does. And the only way to find out what it's going to do is to see what it's going to do. And I think there's one other point that we need to make clear that I think people have been forgetting about AI, is that it doesn't really work that well. We get all these great demos and how well it works. You talked about transcription earlier. A lot of transcription doesn't work well. In fact, I was taking notes during some of the Enterprise Connect keynotes, and I was taking them in Evernote. And Evernote has a version of autocorrect and whatnot, and it kept on correcting. I was typing it correctly, but I was using acronyms, or I wasn't putting things in capital letters when I should have, and it kept on changing it completely. And so I'm thinking, this AI doesn't work, and I think that so much of what we're doing in AI depends on proper speech to text. And I don't know if you're using unified voicemail or whatever, or unified messaging.
Yeah, no,
I still have like a 50% chance that I can't even figure out what the message is about.
Certainly for industry-specific things, it struggles, right? So,
yeah, or self-driving cars, right? That we're still 10 years away from self-driving cars, and so the last 10% turns out to be the really hard part, and so I think we shouldn't put so much excitement into this AI. I think it's important. I think it's great. I love what we're seeing. I love like the multicam video. I think that's a great example. But a lot of this stuff isn't quite ready for prime time yet.
All right, Dave. Well, I think we covered that topic pretty thoroughly. I think next time we do this, we'll probably just have our virtual avatars do it. And then we'll be sent a transcript of what we said. And so you can see how smart your avatar is. So anyways, on behalf of Dave from Zeus Kerravala, and we'll see you next time on another Real Time Report.